5. The 2nd Avenue Subway. New York City's 2nd Avenue Subway, known as the line that time forgot, has been in development since the 1920s. It was halted by the Great Depression, and over time, politicians have siphoned money from the project. International crisis, political jockeying, and price increases have hindered progress for decades. World War II depleted resources and labor during the 1940s. Costs for materials increased during the Korean War. Several groundbreakings were performed during the 1970s, but development was stopped again when the city came dangerously close to going bankrupt. In the 90s, they once again started building. The world's most expensive subway line has been in the works for over a century. Governor Kathy Hochul visited an abandoned tunnel in East Harlem that the Metropolitan Transportation Authority hopes to use for the 2nd Avenue Subway's second phase. Day and night blasting, as well as machine grinding into the rock, were required in Phase 1. Most New Yorkers are blissfully unaware of the construction or the creepy underground area with a 160-foot cavern, 8.7 miles of tunnels, and wet, gravel-filled pits. In order to prevent structures on the surface from becoming unstable, technicians had to freeze the earth to almost 20 degrees Fahrenheit before digging the massive new system beneath 2nd Avenue. 2 years ago, when a section of the line finally opened, the 2nd Avenue Subway had a revival. But the goal of operating trains along the entirety of the Far East Side remains unfulfilled. The second section, with 2 additional stops in between, will extend the Q line from its existing northern terminal at 2nd Avenue and East 96th Street to East 125th Street and Lexington Avenue. The early 1970s saw the excavation of the old tunnel, which runs between East 110th and East 120th Streets. In the middle of the city's financial crisis, work stopped in 1974. According to MTA authorities, it will cost about $6.3 billion to extend the 2nd Avenue Subway 1.6 miles to Harlem. This is by far the most expensive project in history for a subway expansion, costing nearly $3.9 billion per mile. According to MTA documents submitted to the government, the extension's construction will be finished in 7 years. If so, East Harlem trains won't start running below 2nd Avenue until 2029. According to Hochul, the project will be finished during her term in office, so it would cost less than that. Hochul's tour of the abandoned tunnel was dusty, rusted, and ragged. And it's not the only one. Another 2nd Avenue tunnel between 99th and 105th Streets, which would also be repurposed, was also put on hold by the MTA in 1974. Since construction on the East Harlem Tunnel project began under Nelson Rockefeller's administration, Hochul is the 9th governor to oversee this project. A second tunnel dug beneath Canal Street in Chinatown for the 2nd Avenue subway line was also abandoned, but it's no longer needed due to changes in the line's design and layout. When New York voters approved $2.5 billion in bonds to pay for transportation upgrades, the 2nd Avenue subway's construction was formally authorized. It is only one of 3 enormous projects being built under the streets of New York City to extend what is already the largest public transportation system in the country, carrying over 5 million passengers daily. 4. Vicksburg City Hospital. The abandoned and decrepit Kuhn Memorial State Hospital, once a source of hope for the sick, is now associated with something far more sinister. The Vicksburg City Hospital was first opened in 1932 to fight the smallpox outbreak. Later on, it was used to treat injured soldiers during the Civil War. It was also vital during the yellow fever epidemic, which caused the deaths of 6 Catholic Sisters of Mercy, as well as 16 doctors. It was renamed the State Charity Hospital at Vicksburg in 1871, after the state had taken over. The hospital had many roles, which included using a specially built annex to house Confederate veterans. That all stopped after a mysterious fire broke out. The Pest House was a detached building from the hospital. It served as a psychiatric facility where infected patients were kept. In 1954, Lee Kun, a local, passed away. He left behind a strange request and $400,000. He ordered that a committee consisting of 3 Jews, 2 Catholics, and 2 Protestants be formed. This group would decide how the funds should be used. They decided the money should be put towards a bigger facility. In 1959, it was finished and renamed Kun Memorial State Hospital. It would last 30 more years until 1989, when Kun Memorial State Hospital closed its doors after financial and political issues. The hospital has since brought in many paranormal investigators and even landed on the TV show Ghost Asylum, since its doors closed for good. The Mississippi Paranormal Research Institute explored the hospital in 2014. They claim to have witnessed several strange occurrences, including the voice of a little girl asking, "Want to come play with me?" The crew also successfully spoke with the dead using a pendulum, and their K2 meter frequently lit up when supposed spirits were close. The Institute even unexpectedly saw the word "help" appear on the floor in reverse. A team of ghost hunters were investigating the abandoned hospital on June 30th, 2015, when they saw a blood trail. The group followed it to see where it'd take them. It went through the building, a set of stairs, and finally, right outside. The blood trail brought them to the body of a murder victim. Her name was Sharon Wilson. It turns out Sharon, 69, was killed that morning. According to the police chief, she suffered trauma to the head. She was the 4th person that year to be killed in a town of just 23,000 people. Do you believe in ghosts? Let us know in the comments down below. 3. Isle of Youth. La Isla de la Juventud, or the Isle of Youth, is found 30 miles off the southern coast of Cuba. About half of the island is a special municipality, which forbids entry for everyone except those who have authorization from the Cuban government. The island is covered with lush greenery and pine woods. The ruins of a historical jail are also found on the land. The majority of locals live at Nueva Corona, a port city on the northern shore which is only accessible by short, infrequent flights and an erratic ferry service. Although the island is fairly quiet, it had a troubled past. Once known as Treasure Island, it was a favorite among pirates. Some say it was the inspiration for the Peter Pan fairy tale. In 1978, Fidel Castro gave the island its official name. In 1952, he and his brother Raul tried to attack the Moncada barracks. They were imprisoned by the Fulgencio Batista administration after their attempt. Those who were seen as enemies of the new regime were put in prison. Their reputation for harsh treatment and overcrowding grew quickly. Presidio Modelo is the name of the prison, which was modeled after Crest Hill, Illinois' Panopticon Stateville Correctional Center. The concept of the facility was developed by English philosopher Jeremy Bentham in the late 18th century. It's founded on the premise that prisoners are constantly being watched. The cells were built in a 5-story ring around a solitary raised watchtower in each individual structure. In the United States, Portugal, France, the Netherlands, Australia, and Cuba, Panopticon prisons were built but are no longer operating. The concept has been used for facilities all around the world. Due to riots and hunger strikes, Presidio Modelo has been closed for 55 years. Once you get to Nueva Grona, it's not difficult to visit. A 5th cylindrical structure, with what seems like a mess hall on its top level, is surrounded by the other 4. Only one of the structures is physically walled off, but opinions on whether visitors are permitted inside are inconsistent. Long corridors from the prison complex's entrance lead to abandoned colonial buildings, and beyond that, the prison buildings themselves. From crevices and the margins of a few sun-drenched ledges, little plants sprout out of the concrete. Locals will occasionally go across the prison's grounds without ever even noticing the towering, deserted structures. 2. Kayakoi. Despite being approximately 3 miles west of the popular tourist destination Hisaronu, the settlement of Kayakoi has been deserted since 1923. In scorching heat, hundreds of homes slowly deteriorate while a narrative of abandonment waits to be discovered. Kayakoi was once called Levisi and had a population of 10,000. It was made of Anatolian Muslims and Greek Orthodox Christians, who made a peaceful and thriving community. Toward the end of the Greco-Turkish War, Kayakoi was shoved into abandonment. When the goal of achieving ethnic and national uniformity was achieved, Muslims and Christians were transferred between Greece and Turkey. As part of a population exchange, each nation claimed one primary religion. When more than 6,000 Christians abruptly moved, only their stunning stone homes and churches were left behind. Levisi became Kayakoi, Rock Village. Approximately 200,000 Greeks and 300,000 Turks were displaced as a result of the swap. It was orchestrated by Nobel Prize-winning Norwegian scientist Fridtjof Nansen, who was given orders by the League of Nations. The former residents of Levisi came to Greece at that time and quickly made their way to a spot that reminded them of home, 24.8 miles from Athens. But Kayakoi was not inhabited because they thought it was too far away with its hillside position. By 1957, a significant earthquake left its mark on the picturesque deserted town, seriously damaging the structures. Although weakened by the weather, the hillside houses, schools, chapels, churches, businesses, and cafes remain standing today as if they're holding on to life. The Turkish Ministry of Culture granted Kayakoi museum status, and UNESCO declared it a World Friendship and Peace Village. The town has made some significant progress while being in a terrible situation. The Kato Panagia Church is one of the most inspiring remnants of the village's prosperous past. Its fading paintings, vaulted ceilings, and arches tell the tale of a different time, when the building radiated religious grandeur. 1. Fordlandia. Broken down remnants of what seemed to be an industrial town sit inside Brazil's Amazon rainforest. A water tower with a faded Ford logo is hard to miss when entering. The founder of Ford Motor Company, Henry Ford, used the land as both a business operation and a social experiment. Even if it doesn't look that way now, the colony was once Henry Ford's brilliant idea for a new type of industrial enterprise. At the beginning, Fordlandia's future looked bright. Business for Ford in the US was thriving at the start of the 1920s. Ford Motor Company was selling tons of thousands of vehicles while using enormous amounts of rubber for its tires. The US and Britain were supplied with rubber by the Amazon basin, which was initially the world's only source of the material. After British explorer Henry Wickham smuggled rubber seeds out of the basin and returned home with them, everything changed. The seeds were planted by Britain in Southeast Asian colonies, where the crops prospered. Ford was concerned that suddenly Britain had displaced Brazil as the industry leader in the rubber trade. He decided to build a rubber plantation in the Amazon jungle as his own source of material in order to maximize efficiency. He bought millions of acres from the Brazilian government, who were still sore from losing their position as head of the rubber trade. In 1928, his delegates were sent to the country with supplies in order to monitor the project. A sawmill and water tower went up, just as Fordlandia became official. The water tower sported the famous Ford Motor Company logo. The forest was cleared to make way for both the rubber plantation and the town Ford envisioned. He wished to make at least 38,000 tons of latex that came from his farmstead. After that, the product would be shipped to factories in Detroit, Michigan. Everyone who wanted to live and work here, primarily American and Brazilian workers, had to prefer a healthy way of living. That may have included everything from poetry, reading, sing-alongs to refrain from alcohol, which was a trend at the time. Sadly, Fordlandia was a total failure. Henry planted rubber seedlings without the help of a botanist. Those that flourished were soon destroyed by a leaf blight, which ruined the rest of the plants. Workers began rioting in December 1930, which resulted in them overturning vehicles and breaking windows during riots. They lasted only 3 days, and work continued. But even after how much money Ford put into the jungle escape, there wasn't much to show for it. Ford accepted his failure and brought a fresh piece of property downstream in 1933. He named this strip of land Belterra. The site initially held promise, but development was slow. Ford learned after 10 years of work that his factory's 750 tons of annual production fell well below his target of 38,000 tons. After losing more than $20 million in the Amazon, Ford left the rubber business in 1945. For a pitiful $250,000, the Brazilian government bought all of his land. Fordlandia and Belterra's original buildings still stand to this day. They are designated as sites for Amazon tours. That's all for now. Hope you enjoyed it. Which of these places would you like to see? Let us know which one was your favorite. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe. Bye.